really hard. It can be really emotional. So part of the study of that was looking at positive psychology. And I'm currently studying for another master's in human animal interaction, like studying the way that we feel about animals, the way we behave towards and around animals, and sort of the benefits to us, but most importantly for me, the benefits to the animals as well, because that's really important. But that's all sort of study in my private time. Officially, I work for Dogs Trust, which is the UK's largest dog welfare rehoming charity. And my role is to try to embed dog behaviour principles into the veterinary community. So I'm really privileged to try to marry all my dog behaviour experience with my veterinary experience and try to have people working in the veterinary professions really understanding more about dog behaviour. So that's sort of in a
I'm just,
nutshell, that's what I do.
I'm in awe. I want to
I'm
know,
busy.
where do you find the time? I don't
Do you
understand it, honestly.
know? But do you know what? My mentor is a clinical animal behaviourist called Julie Bedford, and when like years ago, I remember her saying to me when I first started to study dog behaviour, when I was working as a veterinary nurse. For Blue Cross, another animal welfare charity, a brilliant organisation like Dogs Trust. And, you know, I was saying, this study, I'm going to be doing this after work in the evenings. I've got also my own dog that I train. My dog may appear at some point, but we train a couple of nights a week. I teach a class. I teach every week as well. And I do want to study and I do want to learn more. And she said to me, Tam, if you want to do it, you make time for it. And that's always stayed with me. And people always say, how can you, like, you're studying again, or you're doing this, or because I also do have a life and I like to go to the theatre and stuff as well. And she was right, like, if you want to do it, you make time for it. And that just makes me think about human motivation. Like, there are so many things in life that we want to do, but actually we very often we don't do them. But there are things we know we should do, and we don't do them because we do the things that we're motivated to do. And sometimes I'm more motivated to stay in and watch telly than I am to go to the gym, for example.
Oh,
um,
yeah.
so it's really the more we can think about what motivates us and what we get out of it, that really sort of drives you to do the things that you really want to do and prioritize. So that's always stayed with me, her saying that if you want to do it, you make time for it. And she was right. Of course she was right.
It's so true. I mean, it's one of those things. So many people ask me the same question, like, where do you find the time to do like all
Yeah.
the books you read and raise a family? But it's like it's exactly what you say. You do make time, and sometimes it doesn't even feel like you're doing work
No.
related stuff because you're that interested in the topic. It just feels like it's probably a hobby in some ways. Like, I don't have
Yeah.
a social life, I have to admit. But yeah, no, it is. You do make time for it. So
Mm.
that actually takes me on to your wonderful book. So obviously we met during the Dogs Trust conference in Glasgow, which was amazing, and I got to hear you speak all about your book, and you even gifted me a copy, which I was
Oh,
mega chuffed about. So I've got it here, and it's all highlighted and things as well, because I'm
oh.
definitely one of those people that likes to highlight things. So what was the motivation behind writing this book, Tamsin?
Yeah, so really the motivation behind the book, which is all about emotional well-being for people that work in the animal welfare field, and that could be from rehoming, it could be the veterinary community, dog training, and groomers like yourself and your community. I think we don't really recognize that these roles, just how emotional they are. Perhaps
Mhm.
veterinary and rehoming, but people forget, or people think, oh, dog training, you're just teaching people how to train their dogs, teaching puppies, that must be wonderful. But actually it's really emotional. And I
Yeah.
mean, I've never groomed, because in the veterinary world, I know, really naughty, we just shave them completely. So I'm sorry to all of your groomers. But we do recommend that they do go and get
Yeah.
in contact with a groomer. But I think people don't realize that actually you have a relationship with the animals and you care about them, and you also care about doing a really good job, but you're also dealing with their owners, and that can bring challenges because of the demands on your time. You know, I know how much effort goes into the care, the husbandry of groomers. I've got friends who groom for a living, and just how aware they are of the dog's body, of their shape, of their health, of actually, almost performing the health check whilst you're grooming them, and maybe being the one to say to an owner, had you noticed there's this lump here? That puts you in a
Yeah,
really difficult position, because you're perhaps having to challenge an owner, and it's really emotional, it's really demanding. And I think we forget sort of how physical but also how emotionally demanding all of these roles are. And so everything I'd learned through my study of human behavior, and also practical philosophy, and just positive psychology, led me to manage my veterinary team at Blue Cross in such a way that I really wanted to create a space where everybody's emotions were taken into account, everybody felt safe to share how they were feeling. And we looked at strategies together as a team, but also for individuals, how to really care for ourselves while doing such difficult work. Because I think, we're all really caring. We all want to do the best for the dogs, the animals in our care. I'm going to default to dogs because I'm doggy. But, all species, we want to do a really good job for them. We want to educate their owners. And very often we kind of almost prioritize doing that, and we think, I'll fit this other one in because I know if I don't do it this week, this might happen to them, or it might not get done, and they won't be as healthy, they won't be as happy. And we take on such a lot of responsibility for part of the happiness of the dogs in our care, and sometimes we compromise ourselves. And I've seen that in the people that I've been managing, and I've seen that in people that I care about really struggling because they're not looking after themselves as well. And I learned a lot along the way through being a manager, through trying different techniques and tactics to help people and myself have that work-life balance. And
yeah.
I just thought, I've learned so much, and I wish I knew this when I was starting out. Like, I've been in this animal welfare industry now for 27 years. I wasn't white-haired when I started. Um, and I just wanted to share. I just wanted to share everything that I had learned about just controlling your emotions, regulating, understanding how you feel and why you feel that way in the first place, but then learning sort of how to manage those feelings, and ways that you can sort of approach your work and have more balance in it, and learn to let go of the things that you really can't control, because that's what we spend so much time worrying about, and we're wasting our time and we're winding ourselves up, and then we go home and life has its own demands on us. And
Yeah.
actually there's got to be a way to bring some sort of balance
Balance.
in and care for ourselves.
And your book does that splendidly. It really does. I mean, it's such an in-depth book. Like, there's so many references. Like, oh my gosh, my reading list honestly must have quadrupled. I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to look at this and this and this. But I mean, you explain things so well in the book. It's something that honestly I recommend everyone watching tonight to go and explore it. It's called The Emotional Wellbeing for Animal Welfare Professionals, and it's obviously Tamsin Durston that has wrote this book. And where can we buy it as well, Tamsin? So how do we?
Oh, well, it's available from the publisher, which is CABI, but it's on Amazon, so you can just search for Emotional Wellbeing for Animal Welfare Professionals on Amazon. And I really tried hard. Like you say, it's full of references because some of us are geeks, and obviously
Very,
we also have to reference what we're saying. Like, I didn't pluck this stuff out of the
yeah,
air. And also, I don't feel like I didn't write the ideas in there. I just shared them. So that they're from psychologists and people that have studied for years in sort of positive psychology. But I just wanted to write them in a really, hopefully, accessible way that anybody can read and just make sense of, like, no fancy words. It's just very simple,
and
very
it's
easy
got
to read, but it's very scientific as
yeah,
well.
there's plenty of diagrams and things. What I
Yeah.
like to do as well, you had tables and diagrams and things, which for people maybe are more visual can really relate to that as well. So I have got some questions for you. I hope you don't mind.
Not
But
at all.
like I say, if anybody's watching this as well and has got any questions for Tamsin in relation to self-care and well-being, then please, sorry, I'm putting my little dash hound down right now.
Oh.
But please just use the comments below the thread, and we'll put them up on the screen for Tamsin to have a look at as well. But for now, I have got a couple of questions for you. So the first one being, I think it's kind of self-explanatory, but in your own words, what would you define self-care and emotional well-being to mean? So when you talk about self-care.
I think for me, it's about being a friend to yourself. I think we often we say things to ourselves very often, like, "Oh, I'm such an idiot." That's something I might have
Yeah.
been heard to say a few times. "Oh, what an idiot." "Oh God, you silly, how stupid." Ugh. And that's I would never say that to my friend. Like, maybe in jest, but I would never say it and mean it. But when I say it to myself, I'm really telling myself off. And I think, come on, we shouldn't talk to ourselves like that. We are worth so much more than that. And so I think self-care is about, you might think, "Oh gosh, well, that doesn't that make me like prioritizing myself? Like, isn't that selfish?" And I just think we've got to reframe that idea. Like, looking after yourself means that actually you're putting yourself in a better position to care for others. And it's about being a friend to yourself and not talking badly to yourself, because I think sometimes we believe that. I think, we're very I write in the book about what vulnerable means, and vulnerable, being susceptible to the words and the actions of others that affect us negatively. And that's for me, that's just being a human. Like, we are all vulnerable to what people say, but we forget about the things we say about ourselves. So self-care is about saying, "Do you know what? I'm all right. Like, I'm okay." um, you
I'm doing
know,
my
I'm doing my best. I'm trying to do my best. I don't wanna hurt anyone. Like, there are some really good things about me, and I don't think, that's something I really encourage people. Like, you've got to really understand that it is okay to think, "Okay, I need to do something for me," and that doesn't make me selfish. It doesn't make me not care about anyone else. If I say no to this extra bit of work, it doesn't mean I don't care. It just means I'm just saying no. Like, that's all.
Yeah,
And
one.
so
Yeah.
yeah, and so self-care really, and your emotional well-being is about making sure that you understand why you're feeling the way you do. I think very often we also, "I shouldn't be feeling like this. I should just be able to I should just be able to get on with it. Why can't I?" And I hear people say these things like, "God, I should be able to get through this without crying. Why am I crying?" And I'm like, there's a very good reason why you're crying. It's this, this, and this, and that's okay. And I had a conversation with somebody yesterday, a teammate who was really anxious about something. One of her animals is not very well. And she was like, "But I'm so anxious, but I'm a veterinary person. Like, why am I?" I'm like, "Because your cat that you love, there's something wrong with him and you don't know what it is. You're right to feel anxious. That's okay." Like, it's being able to own our feelings, but actually not let our feelings affect our behavior. It's learning how to control and regulate our feelings so that we can own them and accept them. And yes, there are times when we're sad, there are times when we're frightened, and it's okay to be sad and it's okay to be frightened, as long as we don't let that become disruptive for our lives and prevent us from moving on. And that's kind of what emotional well-being is for me, but really recognizing how I feel while I feel the way I do, and knowing what I can do to make myself feel cared for.
And that you kind of, when you tapped into obviously how you've got that, your feelings, which then affect your behaviour, and you tapped into that in chapter 1 of your book. I remember you talking about a natural response and how
Mhm.
you obviously have that natural response to how you feel, but you can control the way you respond to that physically as well. So I think in the book you talked about, was that prong collars, like if you see a dog
Yeah.
in practice wearing a prong collar and how that impacts you, because obviously you have your own opinion of that, and how do you try and obviously present yourself in a way that doesn't come across too judgmental to the dog carer at the same time. And for us, I think what we tend to face in kind of similar context to that is like neglect cases where we're having
Yeah.
dogs come in with excessive matting constantly, and it's really difficult sometimes to face dog parents when they're constantly bringing in their dogs matted. So how
Yeah.
would you just advise a person dealing with that on a daily basis? Or how do you program yourself then to not respond?
Yeah.
It's a
It's
hard
it's
one.
it is a hard one because it's so real. And,
Yeah,
I'm sure in the grooming world, same as in the veterinary world, you look at the list and you see certain client and you think, "Oh god,
yeah, hmm
not them. Hi, how are you?" And
yeah,
and it's really hard, but I think one thing that I sort of try to remember and try to encourage is it's about being in the here and now. And we all know, and this is something that so many people have said, but everybody has a story and everybody has something going on, and it's about thinking, what is happening right now? What can I do now to make this situation better? This person, yes, this happens regularly. We might not be, as the groomer or the veterinary carer or the dog trainer, we might not be in a position to really influence that owner's behavior and help them change. But what we can do right now is give that dog some attention that makes them feel better. And if we can turn our attention to what thing that we can do for good, for the health and welfare of the dog that we care about, it's also about really thinking, if I want to change the owner's behavior, what is the right way to go about that? Am I the right person to do it? And very often, yesterday I was walking around the block with my dog and I saw a Doberman on a prong collar, had his ears cropped, his tail was docked. And I hadn't seen a Doberman for ages, let alone one,
yeah,
that had been docked and cropped and also, um, but it's not, I could have approached that owner and said, "What are you doing? Do you know that if your dog pulls, there's a different way?" And how would the owner have responded to me? They would have felt embarrassed, shamed, maybe cross, maybe angry with me, shocked. We're in the street. It's not the right way to try to educate. So it's really thinking, what is my response to what's happening? Yes, I'm angry, horrified. I could be frightened. All of those feelings. But what can I do personally and to make a difference? And I think with groomers, and it's the dog who is in our care that we can really focus our attention on. We can help them to feel better. And we might feel it's futile. They're just going to come back in 6 months and it'll be the same. But you know what? I will be here for them. I will tend to them again. I will do my best. And I can finish that day knowing that that dog is now healthier than they were before they came into my care. And that may be just the extent to which I can help in this case. But I
yeah,
can support organisations, that actually try to change owner behaviour and educate them. I can support those organisations and let them take that. But my responsibility is for this dog's welfare, and it's really centering our attention on that. And you can apply that in lots of different situations as well, thinking how I feel. What are the consequences of me behaving in response to that emotion? What might happen as a result of that? Actually, can I just concentrate on what I can do to make a positive difference without putting myself at risk, without putting the dog at risk, and without putting that owner at risk? Because if we do take on or decide that I've got to say something, we might risk that owner actually not coming back to us. At the end of the
gosh,
day, they're here in front of us. Yes, the dog's got matted again. Yes, that's really frustrating and really devastating, but they have brought that dog to us. So
yeah,
something is keeping them bringing that dog to us, and that's our relationship with them. And that is actually a wonderful thing. So it's always trying to look for the positive and
yeah,
just controlling ourselves and just thinking, how can I best help this dog right now? If I act on my emotions, the owner may take this dog away and that dog remains matted. And I know that's a very simple sort of example to use, but you can apply that in lots of different situations. And it's just that in the moment, breathing, centering your attention, being very present, and actually putting aside any sort of prejudgments.
Yeah.
I also have like a bit of a sort of mantra or a bit of advice, which is just every time you meet somebody, try to meet them as though you're meeting them for the first time. Because every time we do meet someone, it's a new opportunity for a new interaction with them. My example of this is we had a lovely client. Well, I say lovely client, one of the clients that you'd be like, here she is. I won't say the name. But she used to come in and we had this who can make Dolly's mummy, let's say, smile today because she was always really miserable and really moody. And I ended up in a clinic having a really long conversation with Dolly's mummy at one point because Dolly was needed tests or something. And she actually told me that she was in chronic pain. And I just thought, well, this is why she's, and none of us knew that. And but it meant that every time we saw her on the list, we prepared ourselves for a moody interaction. And that means that you come to that person expecting that, and you're almost putting on this, and you project it back to them. And that's not fair. It's not fair on them. It's not fair on you. And it results in an interaction that actually isn't as positive as it could be. So to try to put all your sort of preconceptions aside, even if, every time you've met someone before they've behaved a certain way, maybe some of that's because of the way that you've responded to them.
Yeah.
So just meet people as though for the first time as well. Let every opportunity be the chance to engage with them and draw the best out of them and out of yourself as well for the dog's welfare.
That's a really good way of putting it. I think that's really important as well. I've got a couple of stories actually that it's just like what you say, you expect and you assume, and then you find out there's an underlying reason why that's happening, and then you feel terrible all the same for thinking,
I know.
how can I be so judgmental? Like, then that's a whole other story, isn't
Mm.
it?
And that's
Um,
the thing. I think people say, "Oh, don't judge, try not to judge." And I do try not to judge people, and I do try to remain very open. But the thing is, we are human,
yeah.
and humans, we do make judgments. That is what we do because we're weighing things up all the time in our mind. And you can make a judgment, but not act on it. I might judge that person with that Doberman a certain way, but that doesn't mean that it has to affect the way I interact with them, the way I think about them, the way I want to communicate. But you really can be as non-judgmental as possible, and you can be as fresh with everyone as possible, but you have to practice it. We get good at what we practice, and if we practice being, judging and thinking the worst of people and, oh, that of course they've done this again, we get better and better at being that way. So you have to catch yourself in it, stop yourself, and then practice. Okay, I'm going to reframe it now, and let me get better and better at reframing. And that is an act of self-care because that's developing your own skills in being in the moment and seeing the best and looking for those positive outcomes that you can make.
One of the other things I really loved about your book was I heard, before I read your book, I'd heard of the hierarchy of dog needs while under my post. I
Yeah.
didn't realise, obviously, there was a hierarchy of
Uh,
human needs. Is that what it's
yeah,
called?
yeah,
Tell me
absolutely.
more about that then. How's that in relation to self care?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. So it's based on this psychologist Maslow, who was working in the 1960s. And I always think, well, that's not that long after the war, when people had been through this horrific global disaster,
Yeah.
human-made disaster, which I guess leaves you with all. I mean, we're still in war now, there's war everywhere.
Yeah.
Well, not everywhere, but but I think that made people really question what is humanity? What do we need to actually thrive, to be successful? What are our relationships like? And I think it led to all sorts of questions and all sorts of research in that sort of time post-war. And so Maslow came up with this idea that as a human being, we all have these basic needs, everyone, and only when your sort of lower level needs are met can you then focus on meeting
Yeah.
higher needs? So at the bottom of this sort of pyramid, if you like, or staircase of needs, he put like your
Until
biological needs. Obviously, we need food, shelter, um, and then on top of that, we need to feel safe and secure. And I think I mean, you know, I often think maybe those two tiers, you could swap them around, because I think for many, if you don't feel safe and secure, you're not able to even think about food, shelter, and stuff. I think they're very intertwined.
yeah,
But then we also, as all human beings, we all need sort of companionship. We need love and belonging. But we will all have our own sort of range of how much of that we need. Some
yeah,
people need lots. Some people are quite lone wolfy, quite happy in their own company, and that's fine. But we all will have a need to have some sort of social interaction, because we are a very social species. And then on top of that, we have other needs. We need to fulfill our mental potential. We need to be able to problem solve. I was reading today a thing about challenge and how important challenge is for us as human beings, because we get a lot of sort of self-esteem from overcoming, from rising to challenges, and our work gives us a lot of challenge, as we know, and
yeah.
sometimes we don't feel like we're rising above it, but we all actually, we really benefit from a little bit of challenge, and that helps us to this sort of idea of what he put at the very top, which is, he called it self-actualization, but
Mhm.
that really just means, just as we say, like on the Instagram, being my best self, like, and true happiness is at the top, and basically living the dream, being fulfilled, having meaningful relationships, but feeling as if you're making a difference. But we get so much happiness out of that, but we can only really experience that if all the other needs underneath the foundations are there,
Yeah,
because if they're not there, we don't have anything holding us up.
yeah,
And we get a bit of pressure, perhaps at work, perhaps, where we need to problem solve and stuff. When we do face the pressures doing that, we don't have our physical health and our stability below that to hold us up, and we crumble. So it just shows you just how important it is for us to have all these things in our lives, and to create really safe environments, to have really adequate food, nutrition, sleep, all of these
yeah.
primal sort of needs that we need before we can even think about, um, really true, what he sort of true happiness, really at the top of that pyramid.
It's so fascinating because I hadn't a clue it
Yeah.
was something that applied to humans until obviously reading your book. So it just opened, it blew my mind, but also opened my eyes to so much. You're like, oh my gosh,
Mm.
like I'm completely deprived of myself, like my
Yeah.
basic needs are not met. Um, it really gets you thinking. So you can
Yeah.
look at online as well, but like I say, everything's on or sorry, within Tamsin's book as well, if you were curious to know what the hierarchy of human needs is. So one of the big topics, and obviously our line of work as well, is imposter syndrome. And it's huge. I think it's just feeling under pressure to have that perfectly pleasing aesthetic style dog. And often, you kind of under pressure, you tend to kind of forgo your ethics sometimes just to exceed expectation. So how would you advise groomers going forward with imposter syndrome and obviously feel like they're under pressure to be the very best stylist over and above everything else?
Yeah. I just, I'm really fortunate. I mean, I don't work for myself. I work for an organization, and I just can't imagine the pressure of running your own business. Of, when we met at the conference, I had the opportunity to speak to lots of groomers and dog care professionals, and just the pressure of things that I hadn't thought of, like advertising, marketing, social media. I don't know what's on the dog grooming curriculum when you learn how to style and cut, and I know how difficult that is, because I can't even hold scissors properly. I wouldn't dream of trying it. But I don't know if you get taught about social media management and accounting, and that there's so much involved, that when you actually just want to care for dogs and, really look after their coats and have them the best that they can be, then as healthy as they can be. So the challenges are just almost multifaceted. They come from all over. And in terms of really thinking about like, how do we address those challenges? With imposter syndrome, we doubt ourselves, we doubt our ability to do the job that you've got qualifications for, or you've trained, or you've shadowed someone, you've learned how to do this amazing, really technical skill that not everybody can do and not everybody is capable of learning even. But every time you have a new client or a new dog or a breed that you haven't seen before, or the temperament of dog that you haven't encountered before, or a dog that has special needs, it all feels new again and you
Yeah.
doubt yourself again. And when we look at all the sort of science around imposter syndrome, it's more prevalent in females, which is interesting, but it's also very prevalent whenever you start something new. And I think that's, for me, that's really interesting because as a dog trainer, I might have trained thousands of dogs and their owners, but each new client completely new, completely different because they're all so unique. So even though you might be grooming, I don't know, let's say 5 Samoyeds, each one of them will be unique in some way, even though you might be doing the same style.
Yeah.
Um, and so that leaves you vulnerable to feeling each time, oh, I'm starting again from the beginning, like this is all new. And then that's how we doubt ourselves. So thinking about how to, that's a way to explain why we experience it. And actually that, because we tell ourselves, "Oh, I shouldn't feel like this. Like I've been doing this for 10 years. I should feel fine." But actually we shouldn't. We need to remember that actually every experience is new. And so, yes, if it's okay to feel that self-doubt, but let's remind ourselves of why we are here. We have a passion for this topic. We have studied it, or we have observed. We can ask somebody for help if we need. We don't have to take this on if we're really feeling weak. If perhaps we know we've got the ability to do this style, but actually our lower level needs, I haven't slept all night, I've been poorly, I'm physically not feeling fit, I've hurt got an injury somewhere, not feeling 100%. Actually, if those lower level needs aren't being quite met, our foundations are a bit wobbly, and that will make us doubt ourselves again. So there will be times when actually addressing those, making sure that we are, fit, healthy, as well as we can be, will be one way to counter imposter syndrome. But it's really just reminding ourselves of why we are here, what we're doing, and that we are trying our best, and that we do have the skills and qualifications to take this on. And where we don't, we can, what can I do to help myself learn more, to feel more confident?
Yeah.
And it's about that self-belief. And we get our self-belief in sort of 4 main ways. One is from feedback, and so are you guys um, seeking feedback from your clients? I'm sure you get thank you letters, and I'm sure you've all had hopefully lovely Christmas cards from all your clients. But actually, do you ask them for real feedback that could be helpful to you? That can be difficult because you're laying yourself open to hearing something that you might find, oh, and get defensive about or worried about. But if you remember, this is going to help me improve and help me change what I'm doing and feel better about what I'm doing. So you could ask for feedback. You could ask for feedback, maybe not from your clients, but from another groomer, someone you
Yeah.
trust. If there's someone in your community, share a picture and this is what I've done. Any tips for me for next time? What have I done well here? And actually set up to get some positive feedback. Ask for some good tips. Give me some positive feedback as well as perhaps one thing that you might change, because then you're giving yourself that balance. So getting feedback from people that you trust is one way. Having really positive experiences where you master that technique. So actually practicing again or revisiting, studying, continued learning. Like I'm still learning about dog behavior even after studying for over like 15 years and 2 degrees in dog behavior. I'm still learning because there's always more to learn. So keep having those experiences. We also learn and we feel good when we watch people that we identify with um, doing the thing that we want to do. So it
Mhm.
might be that, if I'm wanting to let's say I'm a groomer and you know, there's a certain style that I've not attempted before. Perhaps it's an Afghan, and I'm thinking, oh, I wouldn't know what to do. Let me contact some of my friends or contacts who might have that experience, and let me talk to them about it. And maybe I could go and watch somebody grooming a dog of that breed. Because when we see people that we actually connect with and we can really relate to achieving something, that helps us believe that we can do it as well. So there are lots of things that we can do to help really put ourselves into that sort of, yes, I can do this and I believe in myself. And the last one is about having really positive associations with what we're doing, reminding ourselves of all the really positive things we've done. So, and I'm sure, you know, maybe in salons that you do have your board where you've got all the beautiful pictures of the dogs like looking absolutely tip top, and you can, do you not? Where you can look at it and go, look, I did that. I
That's
did
just not
that.
my thing. Like, so, and this, and kind of what I do is more your kind of comfort grooms. So, see
Yeah,
styling. Oh my gosh, like, do not come to me for styling. I'm like
I
Edward
wouldn't.
Scissorhands, but the bad version. But no, I think it totally relates to everything that you've just said again, though, Tamsin, you're so right. I think it's really tough to kind of disconnect from those kind of feelings of, oh, I'm comparing myself to
Yeah,
the people that I'm looking up to, and how you're going to have to try and kind of step away from that comparisonitis or whatever you
yeah,
call it, and just actually embrace the actual learning opportunity that you see in front of you. So I think I think it's a great idea, but I think it's really hard sometimes to kind of look at it
yeah,
as I'm learning from this person rather than comparing.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's such a good point because I was in a yoga class on Monday night, and the teacher actually said, yoga is about you and yourself, and you don't compare yourself to anyone else. It's your journey. No
Yeah.
one else has no one else has a body like you. And I was like, yes, she's right. She's right. No one does. Um, but hey,
Oh,
that I loved that, and I just thought, yeah, and it's when I'm training my dog and I'm in a training class, and I always say to my clients, y- y- you can't compare yourself to me and my dog and what we're doing because you're you and your dog. But we're
you're
all doing the same thing, but we'll all do it differently. And it's just remember holding on to that and remembering that whilst you might be looking at someone else and thinking, oh, I'd love to be able to do it like them, someone would be looking at you and saying exactly the same. But we need to tell each other. We need to be open about these conversations, be proud to share our work and say, look, this is what I've done.
yeah,
Um, you know, but it's about doing that in a safe space and having groups like this where you can actually connect with people that you trust, that you feel safe with. Those lower levels of our hierarchy of needs, we need safety, and
yeah,
safety is not just a physical thing, it's an emotional thing, and it's safety in the relationships that we have, especially when we're asking. I would ask somebody that I really trust, like if I've written a behavior report, could you read this and just make sure it makes sense, that it's
yeah,
okay for the owner, like, please check it for me. And that could be somebody that's maybe 15 years younger than me because I work with children now, young people. But I'm okay about that because they've had different experiences to me that are just as valid. And it's remembering that we are all as valid and all as beautifully unique as each other, and we can all learn from each other, but we have to be open for it. We have to
yeah.
be open to that learning. And that's another
Um,
mantra that I sort of have and encourage people to. It's the question, like, who is the teacher in front of me? And always remembering that whenever you're interacting with anyone, even if it is that one owner that just gets your goat, what can you learn from them? Because you there will be something they have to teach you. Every animal you interact with, every person you interact with, there is something you can learn from them and from that into relationship. But you've got to be aware and look for what it is that you can learn. It might be that you learn, well, I'm not going to do that, and
yeah,
that's
I'm kidding.
fine. It's
Not to do.
it's still learning, so it's still positive. That there's a really lovely quote from Nelson Mandela, and he says, "We never lose. We never lose. We either win or we learn." And I
Oh, that
love
is,
that because
that
it's
is lovely.
beautiful, isn't it? And it's just reframing, we don't lose. We can't look at it like that. We win and we come out on top, or we have a learning experience. And I just think that's a really good way to look at sort of getting through life.
Yeah, it's like it reminds me of you're only feeling when you stop trying.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm getting tired up with my dog. Hold on.
Oh.
Don't my headset. Hold on. There we go. I'm back on.
Oh.
It's like the cat. Honestly, Tamsin, I could ask you so many more questions, but I don't want to give as much of your book away on here. um,
Oh.
One final thing I want to basically tap on, which was the whole purpose of this conversation. Actually, I think we were intended in doing a
Mhm.
kind of step by step kind of self care plan, which is totally went to pot now. But
Sorry.
I know obviously don't want to keep you too much longer, but just quickly, what are your top tips then for devising your own self care plan?
Yeah, well, I printed one out so that I could refer to it. So I did prepare a little bit. um, I think when we're thinking about looking after ourselves, it's really important that we really commit to it. And it's
Yeah,
like, to go back to my mentor, you make time for things and you do things that you want to do. So you've got to want to commit to this plan. But it's to think about the self-care plan as sort of splitting it into four parts. So the physical, and so what I've sort of done is, the physical area, you've got to think about what will I commit to doing, and then write down or have it in your head. But it's great to write things down. There's a load of evidence around. If you write something down, it holds deeper. You're more likely to do it. So do write it down. Um, so the physical side of things, the social side of things, because we forget about that, the mental side of things, and then the professional side of things. So your self-care plan is really holistic. It's about your professional life, but also your social life and your home life and your internal life as well. So, for example, in the physical space, it would be to commit to things like monitoring. I'm reading it, so let me read it out. So, I'll commit to monitoring my body for any tension, any discomfort, any pain, and I will take steps to reduce that as soon as I observe it. And as soon as I observe it, how many of us have felt, oh, it's a bit sore on my back, but I'll carry on. I'll just deal with it at the weekend. I'll rest later. No, as soon and we're committing to doing it. Um, Ensuring that I have enough sleep and rest. Ensure that I'm eating well. I'm providing my body with the nourishment that it needs. So that's our physical sort of side of things. And you can add to that. In terms of the social side of things, what I will commit to doing, I will make sure I have at least 5 people, including 2 from within my profession, if possible, who I can really rely on, who I can trust to accommodate my needs, who I can call on. And that's setting yourself up a little sort of buddy system,
yeah,
who I can ask for support and not worry, and who we can commit to supporting each other. And then
yeah,
you've got a ready-made support group. I will also make sure I know how to access help, whether that's informal or professional. And that might just be getting the list of, local counsellors or even doctor, etc. People like Mind.org, who have a really good website with lots of mental health support.
uh-huh.
And then I will commit to doing something that I feel will make the world a better place for everyone. And I will write down, how will I achieve that? What will that be? And I'll do something for me every day. And then with mental, I'll make sure I try to balance work and play. I'll make sure I understand how to relax and think about all the different things that nourish me, and how I can build in like 5-minute relaxation bits into my day, and
Yeah.
do those. Make sure I have lots of opportunities to connect with nature, even if that's just sitting on my doorstep for 5 minutes, just
Oh my
listening to
goodness.
whatever sounds I can hear. It's
Yeah.
5 minutes. If we can't give ourselves 5 minutes just to sit still and listen to the sound of birds, which you always hear, that's really sad. I think we can all do it.
Mhm.
Make sure I've got regular opportunities to do something creative. I think we
Oh,
forget
yes.
how important being creative is. I mean, you like writing stories, for example. We're not all story writers, but
Yeah.
even things like baking or choosing what to cook, or choosing what to wear. That's being creative. What top will I put with, what
Do something
socks will I
different.
put? It's creative. We don't think about it as creative, but creativity is about making something happen that wasn't there before. And that's really healthy for us. Making sure I get the chance to reflect on skills like my assertiveness, my communication, how I manage my time, and think about how I'm doing in respect of that. So I keep reviewing my own sort of performance in that way, and making sure I do something deliberately every day designed just to keep me calm. That might be, for me, that's, sometimes I just put on music and I will listen to one of my favorite songs really loud. I know you shouldn't do it really loud,
I
but
love doing it in
really
headphones.
loud.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just for 5 minutes, just one song.
Yeah.
And so that's
Walk the
mentally.
doors.
Yeah, just
Okay, walk.
dancing,
Yeah.
dancing for 5 minutes. Again, it's 5 minutes. And
It's
and you
freedom.
can, yeah, it shouldn't be difficult, but we
Yeah.
we create all these barriers for ourselves. Just do it. And then
Uh-huh.
professionally, making sure I can dedicate sufficient time to home and work without feeling compromised. So I might have to reflect about how am I going to do that, but if I really spend the time to think about that, will be really helpful. Avoid over promising within the workplace by implementing boundaries that I will stick to. So that I'm not prepared to do certain things, and actually set out terms and conditions for myself. We have terms and conditions for our business, but we don't have terms and conditions for ourselves. So really thinking about what those mean, making sure I can get feedback, like we spoke about before, on my work from people that I trust. That might be getting mentored, or asking someone in my support network if we can just talk about a case that we've both sort of interacted with, or I can talk about a dog that I've cared for and groomed, and they can talk about one, and we can share our stories. And then lastly, just really remembering, noticing, and recording the achievements of every day. And this is something like we do in our team at work. We call it our weekly wins, where at the end of every day you've got to write down, like, what was the best thing that I did today? How have I made a difference to someone? And some days you don't feel like you have, but if you really think about it, it could just be like an email you sent to someone, and that means they've got more information that they needed. That's a win. Write that down, because at the end of the week you've got 5 of those,
Yeah.
and at the end of the month you've got 20 after
Mhm.
4 weeks, and at the end of the year you've got 52 weeks of the year. So
That's
that's a
great.
lot. You've got a lot. But you can flick back through those, and there's
Yeah.
so much evidence around these gratitude journals, writing down what you're grateful for. But I think for me, it's, you could do that for specifically work. You could write down, what am I grateful for from my work today? And one thing I asked the team at Dogs Trust to do was to think about one dog that they'd helped during the day. If that dog could talk to you, what would they say? What would they say? The dogs that you'd give the comfort and care grooms. Thank
Yeah.
you. Like, I just feel
Yeah.
better, and that's the feedback that really matters to us. So just,
Mhm.
why not do that? Why not choose one dog every day and write what they would say? Like, what would my dog say to me today? Like, hopefully, thanks for, I've had a really lovely day. I hope. But
Uh-huh.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's my tip.
Well, do you know what? Honestly, there's so much information just bundled into this 45 to an hour Q&A, and I'm so sorry I bombarded you with that many questions. I didn't intend
Oh,
to, but it's been wonderful to catch up with you, Tamsin. It's honestly a pleasure, and thank you so much for coming on and giving us your time. But once again, for those of you who are interested in, I'm plugging her anyway. You're probably mortified, but I keep plugging you because it's worth it.
oh,
But our
thank you.
book is available on Amazon, like you say. So please do consider buying it if you feel that it's going to benefit you. But if you're watching on the replay, just hit obviously hashtag replay on the thread. And if you do have any questions, then I can always kind of ask Tamsin later on, if that's okay with Tamsin,
Yep,
obviously.
absolutely.
In the meantime, thank you so much again, and have a nice night, everybody.
Yeah.
All right.
Bye.
Bye bye.